I really want to focus on this point of the psychology of both exercise and weight loss, because in all the research that I do on even your conversations and other conversations, clearly the fundamental that sits underneath doing all the things we're going to talk about is having the motivation, the discipline, and mastering one's own mind. Because as you kind of said, we can have all the diet plans in the world and many or all of them might work, but without the psychology of how to lose weight and to motivate ourselves to get to the gym, none of it really matters. So what else do we need to think about when we're trying to understand how to master the beast within our mind?
There's a lot to unpack here.
Good.
I'll start with this. Do you know Ethan Suplee? You familiar with him? So Ethan is an actor. He was in My Name is Earl. He was in American History X, and he was in Remember the Titans, some of the big movies he's been in. Wolf of Wall Street as well. And he was over 500 pounds. Everybody knows him as the really big guy in those movies and those shows. Now he's 220 pounds and looks like he would play a military operator in a show, right? And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, if the house is on fire, just get out of the house. We can worry about why the fire started later, but just get out. And there's so much paralysis by analysis out there that people don't end up actually starting. And if I put 2 plates in front of you, with different food, yeah, we can quibble, but for the most part, if I'm sitting something out with the cheeseburger, fries, and all this okay, versus lean meats, vegetables, we know which one is more conducive to health, right? People will argue about these little things, low carb, low fat, those sorts of things. Just get out of the house. Stop eating so much of this very energy dense, hyper palatable food. Start moving away. And Ethan, I think it was Ethan. He has this thing he says whenever he posts a picture in the gym, he'll say, "I killed my clone today." And I never quite understood it. And then I read a systematic review of successful weight loss maintainers. Now what that means is weight loss, we know diets can help you lose weight, but they don't tend to work long term because people, their adherence wanes and they just kind of regain the weight over time. And if we look at out about 3 years after initial weight loss, it's depending on the statistics you use, it's anywhere from 90-95% of people end up regaining almost all the weight they lost. And this study was about people who had successfully kept it off for a long period of time. So this is the unicorns, right? The 5-10% of people who actually had that long-term success. And there were things on there that you would expect. They practiced some form of cognitive restraint. They did cognitive restraint being counting calories or doing low carb or time restricted eating or some form of restraint. But the thing that stood out to me that really grabbed my attention was so many of them specified and pointed out they felt like they had to develop a new identity. And I texted Ethan and I was like, "Is this what you mean by I killed my clone?" He goes, "That is exactly what I mean." And so one of the things I'll tell people now is think of the person that you want to become. Picture them. Think about what do you think their habits and behaviors look like on a daily basis. Now start to reverse engineer that, right? And you mentioned motivation. And my thoughts have changed about motivation. A lot of people wait to get motivated or inspired. And hey, I think all that stuff's great. But in the course of anything, and I would bring it back to you in building a startup, I'm guessing there were days where you were not motivated to do what you were doing, right?
Yeah, most days.
Right.
So many days.
So motivation's great. When it comes, I say that's like nitrous on a car, right? Give you a quick boost, it'll make you go a lot faster. But discipline is the gas tank. That is, it doesn't, I tell people, detach your feelings from the process, okay? I have a very cold calculus when I look at my goals. What is my goal? What will it take to get there? Some form of work and time, right? No matter how you slice it. let's take, so I won the Masters World Championship in powerlifting in 2022. It took me, thank you. I went to Open Worlds in 2015, set a world squat record there, but then went through a lot of different injuries and a lot of pain. It took me 7 years to get back and win. But there were times where I was very unmotivated to go to the gym because I couldn't lift heavy. I was, in a lot of pain. But I knew if I want to get back there, this is what it's going to take. And so it doesn't matter if I'm motivated. I have to do the things I said I was going to do. And I tell people, try to detach how you feel from the process it takes to get there. And that's really hard for a lot of people to do. But here's the thing. As you do the process, you start to see the results. And then the motivation becomes more sustained, right? The hard part is when you are down in the ditches and you aren't seeing that progress. So when I'm coaching people on this stuff, a lot of it is trying to build their confidence. And so many people, they'll start a New Year's resolution, let's say, because it's the beginning of the year. I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm like, stop. You haven't been going at all. How about this? You're going to be active at least an hour for 3 days a week. Let's start there. If you go 5 days, fantastic, right? But it's different. If you said you're going to go 5 days, you only go 3, you feel really bad about yourself. You say you're going to go 3 and you go 3, you feel really good about yourself.
What's the harm of feeling bad about yourself? So there was a year, 2017, where I said, I called it every day, Steve. And I was like, I'm going to go to the gym every day of 2018, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to tell you what happened because I think you know. but I want to ask the question, what is the harm of setting a huge goal and then failing and feeling bad about yourself?
There's a lot of different versions of like what builds confidence, but I think one of those things is keeping the promises you make to yourself, right? And also just doing the thing you said you were going to do. And that's why I tell people like, hey, for me, if I say I'm going to go 4 or 5 times a week, that's not a problem, because for me, it takes discipline to keep me out of the gym, right? Like I love that. That's fun for me. But if you're somebody who hasn't been going, just start with something. Like, I'm not saying don't be ambitious overall, but you have to build confidence in increments, right? Like, so for example, I'm going to go back to my own personal experience. In 2015, I set a world squat record, 668 pounds at 205 pound bodyweight class. But when I first started lifting, I was horrible at squats. I've got long legs. I am, in fact, one of the world powerlifting coaches looked at a video of my squat and said, I don't know how you did that. And squats were very intimidating to me. I would get really scared trying to do it. My back would hurt, all these sorts of things. Eventually I ended up squatting 668 pounds. But the first time I went in the gym, I wasn't able to do it. The first 5 years, 10 years, I couldn't even imagine that, right? And one of the things I tell people about confidence is I thought if I squatted that amount of weight, 400 or 500 pounds would feel easy. It still feels heavy. I just got better at handling it, right? And I kind of use that euphemism for life, that analogy for life, because life doesn't get easier, but you can get better at handling those things. And the confidence that I built to be able to do that came through the repetition, doing it over and over and over again. And that's what people need. The problem is they don't get the repetition in because they do things like you were talking about, which is they start it'd be like me going in the gym my first time saying, I'm going to squat 400 pounds. I'm going to get crumpled into a heap, right? But if I do what I can do at the time and slowly build that confidence, that can wind up in me doing something that I never thought possible for myself.
I think it was Jordan Peterson that said to me, when he deals with some of his clinical patients, the starting point for them is so small that it almost makes them feel shameful, so they don't do it. So he says he's dealt with people who literally can't get out of bed because their depression is so severe. And telling someone that their goal is just to walk down the hall and walk back feels so small and inconsequential and so full of shame that they just think, no, that doesn't matter, I'm not going to do that. And there are a lot of people out there that are listening right now and they think about where their starting point might be, and it might literally be getting out the house, putting their trainers on and going for a 5-minute walk. But in their heads, they'll go, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to get me to that mountaintop that I know I need to get to. So I'm not going to bother.
A lot of people like that. And I mean, you can take your cliche that you want to, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I mean, it's cliche, but it's very true, right? And I think if you're climbing a mountain, if you're only looking at the top, you're going to feel like you're getting nowhere, right? So if you want to climb a mountain, have in mind the mountain that you want to climb. But when you're climbing it, look at the next ledge and just do that as the checkpoint, right? So somebody asked me once, if somebody had a lot of weight to lose, like over 100 pounds, where would you tell them to start? I'd say, I'd look at where they're at right now. What are their habits, their behaviors? What are they doing exercise-wise? Let's get them to the next ledge, right? So let's just, we can go into this too, but, if they're drinking a bunch of soda per day, trying to get them to go straight to water, that might be very daunting for them, right? Okay, well, diet soda is better than regular soda, and people will argue about it, but I can cite the studies on this. Okay, they're eating certain foods. Can we do something somewhat close to what they're already doing, but find a way to cut out some calories from that, right? Let's try and, I'm going to try and meet them closer to where they are and then slowly pull them back this way.